Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to tackle, I think, one of the most daunting topics for language learners. That final wall between being an intermediate student and actually feeling fluent.
hmm
We're going to crack open the sources and give you what you need to know about how to stop translating in your head and, actually start thinking in English.
Yeah, that internal translation loop. It's like this invisible weight that just drags your speaking speed down to zero. It's the number one complaint we see.
Right.
So many learners get to this point where their input, their understanding is great. But the moment it's time to produce output to speak, everything just grinds to a halt.
It's like the engine just seizes up.
Exactly. So our mission for you today is to show you how to shut that system down, how to bypass your native language entirely, and really train your brain for pure mental efficiency in English.
Okay, let's get right into it then, because this is, I think, the most frustrating part of the journey. You can read, you can understand movies, you can pass grammar tests, but then you get into a real fast conversation.
And it all falls apart.
Yeah, the engine stalls.
And that's because, as the research shows, the goal isn't just fluency. That word is a little vague. Our focus today is on efficiency. Why are you slow?
Yeah.
It's because that standard translation cycle is just eating up all your mental resources.
Okay, so let's define that cycle. The sources are pretty consistent on this. It's this three-step process that's causing all the friction.
hmm
So, step one, you have a thought in your native language. Step two, you have to then, manually translate that thought into English, thinking about grammar and vocabulary.
Right. All the rules.
And only then, step three, do you actually open your mouth and speak?
It's just a massive waste of processing power. I mean, think about it. If you're doing that for every single sentence, you're doing three distinct mental tasks when a native speaker is just doing one.
It's no wonder you can't keep up.
Of course not. That inefficiency costs you time, it costs you energy, and it just completely destroys your ability to be present and participate in a real-time conversation.
So, here's our promise for this deep dive. We're going to share why this happens, why your brain defaults to this translation trap, and it's actually trying to help you in a
Mm.
weird way.
It's a protective mechanism that's gone wrong.
Exactly. And we'll show you why it creates such a huge cognitive load. But most importantly, we're giving you 5 really distinct, actionable steps and exercises you can start using today to rewire that process and go straight from an idea to speaking English. I think we have to start with the personal side of this because that feeling of mental friction, it's just universal for learners, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's that feeling of knowing the word, you know the answer, but you physically can't get it out of your brain fast enough. You shared in our pre-dive notes about learning Spanish. Did you fall into this exact trap?
Oh, 100%. Completely. It was the defining struggle for me for years. The sources just capture that frustration so perfectly.
Yeah.
I had all this classroom training. I knew the vocab lists. I could tell you how the subjunctive worked on paper.
You had the knowledge.
I had the knowledge. But the second a native speaker would ask me some casual, simple question, I'd just freeze. My brain would just short circuit.
And that freezes because their input is coming at you so fast and your internal processor just can't keep up with the translation demands.
Exactly. It wasn't just about finding the Spanish words. It was the what I call the internal mental gymnastics, just to keep up with the flow of conversation. I can just picture the loop right now.
Walk us through it.
Okay, so the question comes in Spanish. Step one. My brain immediately races to translate that into English, my comfortable native language.
Right. Got to understand it first.
Got to understand it. So, step two.
Yeah.
Now that I get it, I formulate my answer naturally in English. Step three, I realize, oh, wait, I can't speak English, so now I have to translate my English answer back into Spanish.
And you're worrying about the grammar, the verb endings.
All of it. Verb conjugations, gender, everything.
Yeah.
And then finally, step four, I might actually manage to speak.
You just laid out what some sources suggest is basically a 7-step thought process for something that should be instantaneous.
Exactly. And you know what happened? By the time my brain had gone through that entire maze of translation and back translation, the conversation was already gone.
The other person has moved on.
They had either repeated the question, which is embarrassing, or worse, they were already talking about something completely different. It was so isolating. I knew the material, but the sheer work of translation just killed my speed every single time. The goal wasn't to have a conversation, it was just to survive it.
That is just such a relatable story, and it perfectly frames the problem. The sources often use the word exhausting to describe translation, and when you break it down like that, exhausting is an understatement. It's a huge cognitive burden.
And this is where we need to get a little more technical in this deep dive. Let's talk about the inefficiency itself. When we say cognitive load, what we're really talking about is the amount of mental effort you're using in your working memory.
So, mechanically, what is the brain actually doing during translation that makes it so tired?
Okay, so what's happening is intense task switching. It's not one smooth process. It's a constant rapid-fire shift between two completely different linguistic operating systems. You're forcing your brain to light up the neural pathways for your native language, let's call it L1, and your target language, L2, at the same time, and then trying to mediate between them.
So the L1 pathways are actually getting in the way of the L2 pathways.
They're acting as a middleman, a filter. The source material breaks it down like this. The inefficient process, just to understand something, takes 3 steps. First, you get the English input, L2. Second, you translate it to your native language, L1. Third, you finally understand the concept.
That delay is just catastrophic in a real conversation, and every time the brain has to switch from L2 processing to L1 retrieval and then back to L2 for the output, you're paying a price.
You are. And that price has a name. It's called the switch cost. Studies on this are really clear. Even simple task switching drains your working memory way faster than doing one continuous task. Now, compare that horrible 3-step cycle to the goal state. 2 steps. Receive English input, L2. Understand the concept. That's it. Done. You physically cut out the L1 middleman. You've eliminated the switch cost and all that heavy cognitive load.
Wow. Okay, framing it in terms of switch cost really drives home how inefficient it is. It's not just about being faster. It's about endurance.
Exactly.
You're actually conserving your mental energy. It lets you focus on the meaning of a conversation, not the mechanics of how you're producing the language.
That's it. If you're not constantly doing that linguistic conversion, your prefrontal cortex isn't working overtime. This is why people who rely on translation feel so deeply tired after even a short chat in English.
Yeah.
The effort is just so much greater.
That makes so much sense. My experience was very similar, but it was with French. At the beginning, every single phrase was this huge, complicated mental map.
Take us back to that. How did your brain handle even a basic interaction?
Oh, it was. It was almost funny now, but it was soul-crushing then. You know, a simple greeting like, "Comment ça va?" I didn't just hear it and understand. My brain had to run this whole diagnostic. It's like, okay, comment ça va? That means, how are you? In English. The correct social response is, I am well. In French, that is, je vais bien. Don't forget to add merci. And then I need to ask back, so, et vous? Or is it casual? Should I say, et toi?
Oh my gosh, the detail. You're describing an internal monologue that's 50 words long with multiple grammar checks just to produce 4 simple words. The friction that L1 intermediary creates is just staggering.
It was an instant energy drain. But then came what the sources call the immersion catalyst. I spent a summer living with a French family, total immersion for 2 months straight.
Right, and immersion is always held up as this magic solution, but for our listeners who can't just pack up and move, it's really important to understand what immersion is actually doing to the brain. What was that change like for you?
The first month was just brutal. I was translating nonstop. My head literally hurt every night. I was so frustrated because the family was speaking at native speed, and I felt like I was catching maybe 30% of the conversation because I was always 3 sentences behind.
Constantly playing catch-up.
Constantly. But then, somewhere around week 4 or 5, it was subtle, not like a light switch, but something started to shift.
The click moment.
Yeah.
How did you know it was happening?
It wasn't that I suddenly started speaking perfectly. It was that when someone spoke to me, the French sounds went straight to the meaning center in my brain. I'd hear, "Il fait chaud aujourd'hui," it's hot today. And I just knew the concept of the heat. I didn't have to do that middle step of, okay, if it's chaud means it is hot in English. That English step just vanished.
That is the crucial shift. That's it. The brain has started to connect the L2 sound directly with the real-world concept. It's bypassing the need to route everything through the L1 system. You are building new, faster, dedicated neural pathways for French.
It was like being set free. And once that direct understanding clicked, the speaking came more easily. I was forming my answers based on the French concepts I was hearing, not translating my English thoughts into French words. It was less like doing math and more like just reacting.
And your story gives us the perfect foundation for the solution. The root cause of this whole translation mess is that your native language, your L1, is the brain's default setting. It's comfortable, it's familiar, it's safe.
Right.
So when it gets hit with this unfamiliar L2 input, its first instinct is to convert it into the familiar L1 format, just to be sure it understands.
So the brain is trying to be safe and minimize risk, but in doing that, it's creating this massive inefficiency.
Precisely. It's an overprotective helper.
Yeah.
So the whole goal of the exercise we're about to share is to disrupt that comfort zone. You have to train the brain through very specific practice to make English feel just as familiar and comfortable, so it stops needing to default back to L1.
We're connecting English words directly to things, to experiences, to concepts, not just to other words in our native language.
That is the goal.
Okay, so that goal making English feel familiar, it sounds huge. But the sources break it down into 5 very practical, actionable steps. And since, moving abroad isn't an option for most of us, this is all about how to bring that immersive experience into your daily life.
Yeah, and we have to set the stage here properly. A huge mistake people make is they try to start thinking in English all day, from day one. That just leads to burnout.
It's too much.
It's way too much. The key is focused, short bursts of practice. And the goal of every exercise is connecting English words directly to real things and real experiences. We're building those direct neural links, and that's what bypasses the need for L1.
We're literally building the architecture for direct thought. Okay, let's dive into step 1. This one uses something we all do all the time, that little voice in our head.
Right. Step 1 is narrate your daily activities in your head. The practice is so simple. You just become the silent narrator of your own life, like in a documentary. Describe your simple, immediate actions as you're doing them, but only using English in your inner voice.
The power of this is that it's so immediate. It really grounds the language in the present moment. So like when I wake up, instead of my usual thoughts, I would think, I'm waking up now, I'm stretching my arms. Okay, I need to get out of bed. I feel pretty tired today.
That immediacy is everything. Because the action and the word are happening at the same time, there's no space for the translation machine to jump in. You are forcing a direct link between the English phrase and the physical experience happening right now. It makes the connection real.
So how can listeners scale this? I mean, for a beginner, I'm cracking an egg is great. But for our audience who are probably more intermediate or advanced, that could feel a little too simple.
That's a great point. For intermediate learners, you want to move beyond just description. Start incorporating intention, emotion, reflection. So instead of just, I'm pouring coffee, you upgrade it to, I'm really looking forward to the caffeine from this coffee. I hope I remembered to buy milk yesterday.
So you're moving from simple subject, verb, object into using conjunctions, future tense, conditional thoughts.
Exactly. You're forcing your brain to create more complex and abstract thoughts, but still within that English framework and still tied to a simple everyday action. This is how you train your brain to automatically default to English for your daily life and for your internal thoughts.
You're making English the operating system for your day.
You're writing a new script for your brain.
Okay, that's step 1, internal narration. Now, step 2 moves from our inner world to our outer world and gives us some visual backup.
Step 2 is label objects in your environment with sticky notes. This is a classic, but it's a classic for a reason. It is a super effective visual and repetitive technique for cementing those L2 to concept links.
I'm just picturing a kitchen slowly getting covered in little yellow squares.
Exactly. You label all the common things in your house with their English names: mirror, refrigerator, doorknob, remote control. The cognitive goal here is that the moment your eye lands on that physical object, your brain automatically fires the English name, completely skipping the native language words you've known your whole life.
This works so well because we're spatial beings. Seeing the word attached to the actual thing is so much more powerful than just seeing it in a vocabulary list next to a translated word.
And the repetition is like muscle memory for the brain. The sources say you should keep these labels up for a few weeks, maybe a month or two, until the English word just comes to you instantly. But, and this is key, once it does, you have to move the sticky notes to less common objects.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah, you move on to toaster oven or spice rack, or even abstract things like putting a note that says to-do list on your notepad. You have to keep challenging your brain to expand the direct English vocabulary.
That rotation is crucial. Otherwise, the labels just become, part of the wallpaper.
They become invisible. You have to keep it dynamic.
Okay, so we've got internal practice and visual practice. Both are silent. Step 3 asks us to activate a part of the brain that's absolutely crucial for speaking.
Step 3 is talk to yourself out loud. Activation. Look, silent thought is essential, but it is not enough to get you to spoken fluency. To really break this barrier, you have to move from thought to physical speech.
So why is speaking out loud, even to an empty room, so important? What's a specific neurological benefit that we're missing with just internal thought?
You're activating the auditory feedback loop, which is critical. When you actually speak a word, you engage Broca's area for speech production, the motor cortex to control your mouth. Then, you immediately hear yourself say it, which sends that information back to Wernicke's area for comprehension.
So it's a full circle. Thought, speech, hearing, and then checking your understanding.
Correct. Silent thought misses that entire auditory and motor part of the loop. Speaking out loud physically strengthens the connection between the idea in your brain and the articulation from your mouth. It makes producing English feel more automatic and faster over time. It turns it from just a mental exercise into a physical skill.
Okay, I can already hear the main hesitation from listeners. It feels awkward. People don't want to feel like they're just talking to themselves.
And you don't have to. You don't need an audience.
Mm.
The source material is clear.
Hmm.
Find a private, designated time. The absolute best opportunity for this is the car. The daily commute is a gold mine.
A private little language lab.
Exactly. Use that time to talk about anything. Your plans for the day, a movie you just saw, an argument you had, or even better.
You could just do the step one narration, but out loud.
You got it. Okay, I'm merging onto the highway now. The traffic is really heavy. I hope this doesn't make me late for my meeting. The content doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The act of producing spoken English from your own thoughts is what's important.
Okay, this is great. Now, step 4 requires a really fundamental shift in study habits. It means getting rid of a crutch that almost every translation-based learner leans on.
Step 4 is switch to an English dictionary. This one is it's non-negotiable if you're serious about this, because a translation dictionary is the very thing that keeps you chained to your native language.
Right. If I look up a new word and the dictionary just gives me the L1 equivalent, I've just reinforced that translation habit. I haven't created a new direct link.
You're just validating the old, slow process. The solution is to use a dictionary where the definitions are given in simple English. So if you look up a word like contentment, the definition should be something like a state of feeling pleasure or being satisfied with your situation.
But doesn't that slow you down at first? I can see the frustration. That seems like a real challenge, right?
It absolutely slows you down at first, and we have to be honest about that friction. But that initial slowdown is an investment. You are forcing your brain to understand the concept of contentment by putting together 3 or 4 other English words it already knows. Satisfied, pleasure, situation.
Ah.
You're training your brain to figure out complex ideas using the English it already has, so you're reinforcing your entire English vocabulary structure at the same time.
So the temporary pain of looking up maybe 5 words to define one new one, it ultimately gets rid of the permanent inefficiency of always translating everything.
That is the cognitive payoff. You're staying inside the L2 environment the whole time, forcing the brain to work purely in English. And the resources here are important. We recommend the Cambridge Learner's Dictionary or the Oxford Learner's Dictionary. They're specifically designed for learners, so the definitions are clear and simple.
That's super helpful, very targeted advice. Okay, so we're training the brain for internal monologue, visual recall, spoken production, and pure English vocab learning. Step 5 kind of ties it all together by changing our whole environment.
Step 5 is create home immersion. The imbalance for most learners is just shocking. They might spend 95% of their day operating in L1. That ratio has to change. We need more L2 input constantly to overwrite that L1 default.
And this doesn't mean you have to move to New York. It just means you have to consciously make English the soundtrack to your life.
Start by making English unavoidable. Watch English TV and movies, not just for fun, but as an active listening task. Listen to English podcasts, English music, read books, even simple ones. Follow English-speaking accounts on social media. Every single piece of input strengthens those new L2 pathways.
And what about the one high-value tip for passive immersion that people always forget?
Changing your device settings. Your phone, your computer, your tablet. Switching the language to English is surprisingly powerful.
Why is that?
Because every menu, every notification, low battery, install, update, settings, it forces you to interact with functional English dozens of times a day.
Right.
You internalize all this useful vocabulary without ever setting aside time to study it.
It makes English just a normal, functional part of your life. And that's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Right.
English stops being a subject and just becomes the tool you use to live.
Precisely. And when you combine that constant English input from step 5 with the internal narration from step 1, you're forcing your brain to both process and generate language in L2 all day long.
All right.
They're maximizing your exposure and minimizing your reliance on L1. This is how English finally goes from feeling foreign to feeling familiar.
Okay, we've laid out a really comprehensive plan there, but as we know, the learning process is never a straight line. So now we need to talk about the mindset, the expectations, and some of the specific problems that always come up when you try to make this big of a change.
Yes, the first and probably most important point here is patience and consistency. We have to stress this. Learning to think in English is it's cognitive restructuring. It does not happen in a week. It takes time, and you have to accept that progress is going to be gradual.
What's a reasonable timeline? If someone is really consistent with these 5 steps, how long before they should expect to feel a real difference?
A true cognitive shift, where you can actually feel that translation loop starting to fade away,
Yeah.
you're looking at least 3 to 6 months of dedicated, consistent practice.
Yeah.
And the sources are very, very clear on this. Progress is not linear.
I know this feeling so well. You have one amazing day where you feel like you're thinking purely in English, you feel like you've finally broken through, and then the next day you're tired, and your brain just defaults right back to your native language for everything. It feels like you're back at square one.
And that fluctuation is completely normal. It's expected. When your brain is tired, it will always go back to the comfortable default, to L1. It doesn't mean you failed, it just means you're tired. Those new neurological pathways we're building, they aren't strong at first. They need constant reinforcement.
Right.
So our mantra here has to be, short, focused sessions done consistently are way more valuable than one big, heroic marathon session once a week where you try to be perfect.
Consistency over perfection. That takes a lot of the pressure off. Okay, let's hit the big fear. Dealing with limited vocabulary. People think, if I don't know enough words, won't trying to think in English just be frustrating and make me give up?
It's a huge concern, but the answer is no. You absolutely can and should start thinking in English today, no matter what your vocabulary size is. You just work with the tools you have. Thinking in English is how you build your vocabulary faster. It's not the reward you get after you've built it.
But what do I do in that moment when I'm thinking about something and I don't know the English word for it? How do I stop myself from just immediately jumping back to my native language?
This is where we need to introduce a really crucial skill. It's called circumlocution. It's the strategy of describing the word or concept you don't know,
Right.
using the English words that you do know. You force yourself to stay inside that English linguistic bubble.
Okay, let's give a lot of examples here because this is so important. So if I can't remember the word spoon, what does that internal description sound like?
Instead of defaulting to your native word for spoon, you force yourself to think in English. The small metal thing I use to eat soup and ice cream. If you forget the word subway, you think the train that goes into the city very fast.
What about an abstract word like frustrated?
You'd think, I feel bad because I cannot do this work and it's making me angry.
That is brilliant. Because not only does it keep your brain operating in English, but it's teaching you a skill you need for real-world conversations.
It's teaching you communicative competence. I mean, native speakers do this all the time when they forget a word or they're trying to explain something complicated. You're learning how to work around your vocabulary gaps without stopping the flow of your thought. That flexibility is a huge sign of advanced fluency.
So by practicing this internally, you're preparing yourself to speak more fluently in a real conversation, even when you don't know all the words.
Exactly. It's not just about learning words, it's about learning a communication strategy. And if you stick with step 4, the English dictionary, and step 5, immersion, your vocabulary will grow, and you'll need to do this less and less. But the skill will always be there for you.
Okay, next common question, the transition phase. Mixing languages. When I first try this, I find myself thinking in English, but then I keep dropping in nouns or verbs from my native language. Is that okay at the beginning?
Yes. Initial mixing, or code switching, is acceptable as a temporary bridge. We should see it as a necessary crutch. The end goal is pure English thought, of course. But if dropping in one native word allows you to keep the rest of the sentence's structure and flow in English, that is so much better than just giving up and thinking the whole sentence in L1.
So if I'm thinking, I need to buy a new native word for battery for my flashlight, that's a step in the right direction.
Yes, because your brain is still processing the structure, the intention, and all the surrounding words in English. The focus should be on progress, on maintaining that English framework, not on being perfect right away. As you get more input from your home immersion, Those little islands of your native language will naturally be replaced by the correct English words.
Let's get to the big challenge for more advanced listeners. Thinking about complex topics. What if I want to think about politics or philosophy or my own professional work? These things require really advanced vocabulary and complex sentence structures. How do I even start?
This is where the advice has to be a little more nuanced. It's not enough to just say, start simple, because that can feel a bit dismissive. You're right, complex topics need advanced language. But we still have to start by building a scaffold for the thought.
So don't try to immediately think a sentence that sounds like it came out of an academic paper.
Please don't, no. Even with a really abstract idea, start by just articulating the main point in simple terms. For example, if you're thinking about climate change policy, don't start with, the geopolitical ramifications of multinational regulatory failure necessitate a paradigm shift.
My brain hurts just hearing that.
Right. Instead, you start with simple building blocks. The climate is getting warmer. This is a problem for people. Governments need to make new laws. You establish the core concept in English first.
And then how do you build up the complexity from that base while staying in English?
You focus on the connectors and the structure. Even if some of your vocabulary is still simple or you have to use circumlocution, you practice using phrases like, if this continues, consequently, the ocean will rise. Or, on the one hand, this policy is good. Furthermore, it helps the economy. However, the other side says that.
Ah, so you're training your brain to link ideas using those sophisticated English transition words. Consequently, furthermore, conversely, even while the nouns and verbs you're using to describe the core idea might still be pretty simple.
That is the key insight. Your language skills and the complexity of your thoughts have to develop together. Thinking in English about complex topics is how you learn the advanced language you need to discuss them. It's part of the process, not the final prize.
That completely reframes the whole mission. You're not waiting until you're fluent to think. You're using the act of thinking to become fluent.
Precisely. Which leads perfectly to the next point. Specialized focus for professionals and students. If ye need English for a very specific reason like medicine or engineering or finance, then your practice should be focused on that.
So instead of narrating myself making breakfast, I should be narrating my work tasks.
You should set aside specific time for it. If you're a doctor, your internal monologue should be about reviewing a patient's case or describing a procedure or analyzing lab results, all in English. If you're an engineer, you should practice mentally outlining the steps for a design review.
That's incredibly efficient. You're connecting English directly to the high-stakes knowledge you use every day. The brain has to see the immediate value in that.
It creates this powerful feedback loop. You reinforce your professional knowledge and your L2 skills at the same time. The technical words become linked to the actual function, not just a word on a list. And that massively speeds up your fluency in your specific field.
That real-world relevance has to be a huge motivator.
It's a game changer. The language is no longer an abstract hobby. It's essential for your career.
Okay, let's switch gears to a more psychological milestone. I love this one. The dreams milestone. It feels like the ultimate proof that your brain has finally accepted the new language. Is dreaming in English a real significant thing?
It is. It's reported by intensive language learners all over the world. And yes, it's very significant. It's a sign that the language has moved from being this conscious, effortful task that you manage in your working memory to a natural subconscious process that's being integrated into your long-term memory.
So your brain is literally processing the world in English even while you sleep.
It's a powerful signal that your L2 has reached a very high level of familiarity. The sources confirm that it's usually triggered by intense daily exposure.
I remember my own moment with this when I was learning French. It was after about a month of that 247 immersion. I woke up one morning and I was genuinely excited because I realized I just had a whole conversation in my dream entirely in French.
And was it some deep philosophical dream about the meaning of life?
No, not at all, which almost made it better. It was so mundane. I was dreaming that I was at a little market buying vegetables. I think I was arguing about whether the apples were fresh enough. Just a completely normal, practical conversation.
And that's usually how it is. The brain starts with the everyday stuff. But waking up after a dream like that, it feels like a reward for all your hard work.
Yeah.
It's like proof that your brain is finally thinking automatically in the language.
It was this amazing feeling of liberation. But we should clarify for listeners, it's a really cool milestone, but it's not a requirement for fluency. Don't worry if it doesn't happen to you. It's just a fun benchmark.
Exactly. Focus on the steps, and if the dream happens, enjoy it. Now let's talk about something that should really motivate everyone who's practicing steps 1 and 3. The freedom from mistakes.
This is the beautiful paradox of thinking in English. It deals directly with that crippling fear of being judged.
Right. When you are narrating your day in your head or talking to yourself in your car, who is your audience?
Just you.
You are the only judge, which means there is zero external pressure. You are completely free to make every single grammar mistake, to use the wrong preposition, to mess up your verb tenses over and over and over again until you get it right.
That's so freeing. So if I think to myself, I go to store yesterday, or she happy about movie, I shouldn't stop and correct myself.
Do not stop. Do not interrupt the flow of thought. The main goal is to get past the translation barrier and just use English to affirm the idea. Grammatical perfection inside your own head is irrelevant at this stage. The important thing is just to keep using the language.
And because you're doing that while also immersing yourself in correct English input from step 5, those correct grammar patterns, like using the simple past or subject-verb agreement, will just naturally start to feel right over time and will override your own incorrect habits.
Absolutely. Think of it like a rough draft. You get thousands of chances to practice for speed and fluency without ever having to feel embarrassed in front of another person. You should embrace the mistakes. They're just reps.
Finally, we need to talk about what to do when it all just gets to be too much. Handling mental blocks. You're in the middle of narrating your day and your brain just gives up and switches everything back to your native language.
It happens to everyone, even very advanced learners. You're consciously pushing your brain out of its comfort zone, and sometimes it just hits a wall and runs back to what's familiar.
When that block hits, should you try to force yourself back into English?
No, don't fight it. If your brain is really struggling and defaulting, that's a signal of cognitive fatigue. Just take a break. Step away from the exercise. Go do something else for 15 minutes or an hour or even for the rest of the day.
Acknowledging that fatigue is part of the process is really important.
It's essential. Remember, the whole point is to make English feel comfortable. Stress and frustration are the opposite of comfort. Be gentle with yourself. Come back to it when you feel refreshed. Maybe start with something easier, like just labeling 3 things you see, and then try the narration again later. This is a marathon, and consistency over time is what matters.
That is such sound, empathetic advice. This whole journey of breaking the translation barrier, it's challenging, but it's so rewarding because it unlocks a totally new level of speed and connection with the language. This has been a really deep look at the mechanics of how our brains learn language and how we can actually, rewire them to think directly in English. Let's do a quick final recap of those 5 actionable steps that our listeners can start using the minute this deep dive is over.
Okay, we covered. Number 1, narrate your daily life in your head. Number 2, label the objects around you. 3, talk out loud to yourself, especially in the car. 4, switch to an English dictionary. And 5, create home immersion with media and your device settings.
And let's just hit those 2 critical mindset points one more time. The things that will get you through the 3 to 6 months it takes to really feel the change.
First, remember that thinking in English is a skill that takes consistent practice over time. It's not a switch you can just flip overnight. And second, don't compare yourself to other people. Just focus on your own progress. Compare yourself today to where you were yesterday.
Okay, now for our final actionable exercise. This is our provocative thought that we challenge you to do right now before you do anything else today. This is your very first step.
We want you to pause this deep dive right now. Look around the room, wherever you are, and immediately describe 3 specific things you see. Use a full sentence or 2 for each.
Do it out loud if you can, or just in your head if you're in public.
Right.
But there's one strict rule. You have to connect the thing you see directly to the English words. No native language middleman. For me, right now, I see the sunlight reflecting off the desk. I need to sharpen this pencil later.
That simple act proves that you can bypass your translation system right now, today. Start small, be consistent, and trust this process. Your brain is an amazing learning machine. It is more than capable of operating efficiently in English.
You've got the tools. Start now. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Keep practicing, keep learning, and start thinking in English.
Bye, everyone.